Hey Minties, this is the Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition. And today, join me as I take an advanced look at the reprint of the Ultimates Omnibus from Marvel Comics. So, please stay tuned. Okay, before we get started, I do want to give a shout out to David Gabriel and Michael Breen from Marvel Comics for sending us an advanced copy of this book. Now, this is the Ultimates. This is by Mark Millar and Bryan Hitch. A series that started in comic book format back in 2002. That was part of the Ultimate line from Marvel Comics. It's been previously collected in trade paperbacks and these two hardcovers right here. And this is also a reprint because this originally came out a few years ago, but it has sold out. Now, the contents, believe it or not, of this are a lot more than what's included in here. Well, not a lot more. It does include an annual and a few extra pages. So let's take a look at the book and talk about the contents, and then, of course, the build. So here we have the cover by Bryan Hitch, the spine, Ultimates, Mark Millar and Bryan Hitch, and then the back showing all the covers that are collected in here from all the comic books, and the price is $100. One of the things to note here is the parental advisory, because this was a lot edgier during its time when it was coming out. Now let's take a look at the book without the dust jacket. You have this image from Ultimates issue 1. That's the cover to Ultimates issue 1. Okay, so let's get this open. Now these are the blue bookend pages, which we also saw in the reprint of Annihilation. I don't have the original printing of this omnibus, so I don't know if they were originally black or not. Here are all the people that put the book together, like Mark Beasley, Caitlin O'Connell, Kateri Wood, Jennifer Grunwald, Jeff Youngquist, and David Gabriel, of course. And then up here, I love seeing these names right here. These are two of my favorite colorists that are still doing work, and that is Paul Mounts and Laura Martin. And yes, of course, Mark Millar and Bryan Hitch. There is a foreword by Joss Whedon that was also written in 2004, so it's been a while. Now, what are the contents of the book? This particular omnibus collects Ultimates Volume 1, 1 through 13, Ultimates Volume 2, so it was called Ultimates 2, 1 through 13, and then the Ultimates Annual Number 1 and Ultimates 2 Number 1 Variant Edition. It's the sketch edition. There's the classic Captain America look that was revamped for this particular series, or this particular Ultimate Universe. My God, that is I forgot how much the images in here were jaw-dropping. You know, Bryan Hitch, he's one of these guys that came out of England, and I really enjoyed his artwork because it reminded me of Alan Davis, like a ton of Alan Davis. And I'll talk about the story here in a little bit, but I wanted to focus just on the artwork. And then he went over to Wildstorm and started doing a lot of things over there. And by the time Stormwatch and The Authority came out, he had changed the game when it came to comic book art. He created, or at least I like to think that he is the one that created this widescreen summer blockbuster type of artwork when it came to panels and layouts. Like, his stuff was just so epic. It's the only way to describe it. Like when you see an alien threat coming in the pages of The Authority, and in this, even though I'm not trying to spoil anything, it really feels like it because it's just so real and so detailed. Look, I'm just going to show a few panels, and then I don't know if I can do, there's a specific page in here that I think it's done really well. It was done in the hardcover, the oversized hardcovers the same way, and I'll showcase those in a little bit. But yes, right, speaking of Authority, both Bryan Hitch and Mark Millar came from that book over to Marvel, and then Mark Millar helped relaunch the Ultimate line with Brian Michael Bendis. He worked on Ultimate X-Men, and then this book right here, The Ultimates. Now, a lot of the plot in here, including some of the characters, such as the Samuel L. Jackson-looking Nick Fury, influence a lot of the things that happen in Joss Whedon's movie. It's a modernization retelling of the Avengers is what this is. If you've never read it, if you don't know what the Ultimate Universe is, it's an alternate take on these characters, and it's its own universe. It's written out of continuity, and I'm not even going to talk about Secret Wars or the 616, but mainly that's what it is. It's an it's an alternate reality where the Avengers were formed in modern times. And I say modern times, but it's really the year 2002. And you can kind of tell it's a little aged, especially I think what is it, issue 2, where you get some actors and actresses making cameos that are just how do I put it, not as popular as they were back in 2002, such as the case of Shannon Elizabeth here and Freddie Prinze Jr. and things like that. So it does feel a little dated. Oh my gosh, that is freaking gorgeous. That is the St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York. Yeah. Oh, it's just so awesome to go back and read this. Now, for those of you that have followed the channel, you know how I feel a lot about Mark Millar's writing. But I'm not going to lie, when I came back into comic books, I bought into the hype of this. I was like, oh, wow, it's a retelling of the Avengers, but done in modern times. This is amazing. This is so edgy. And I think I fell for it for a while, until I started going back and reading my classic Avengers books. And then I was like, oh, yeah, I prefer these. But you know, this is the comic book that really got my brothers interested in comic books. I remember both of them. I was the guy that would read comics as a kid, and neither one of my brothers would read them. And then when this came out, I was like, I think you guys will like this. And sure enough, both of them were like, man, they really need to make a movie like this. And as a matter of fact, I think they made, I want to say 2 animated series. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. They were called Ultimate Avengers, I believe it was what the animated series was called. Even though it's a retelling of the story, some of the characterizations still stay the same. I think there are a few changes, like Thor. He's more of a hippie in this, I guess you could call. Even Mark Millar calls him that. Captain America doesn't wake up until the year 2002, and he's kind of a little more edgier. There are a couple of pages in here, I think, that I don't want to spoil anything, so never mind. I'm not going to talk about it. There's some pretty interesting moments, how he handles things different that happen in the 616 universe, how he handles them here in the Ultimates universe. He's not your Boy Scout, like your cookie-cutter Boy Scout that he is in the 616 universe. And as I flip through these pages, this is the selling point of the book, is this oversized artwork by Bryan Hitch, if you've never read this. There are some issues with the dialogue that I had, but this is not a review of the book. But I know if you've been reading comic books for the last probably 5-6 years, there's a specific panel by Captain America where, look at that is gorgeous, where, you know, he's pointing at the A on his headpiece. And well, if you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, it's a funny story because in the back pages here, and I'll look at that in a little bit, Bryan Hitch talks about how there was a Paris convention and Mark Millar skipped it, and then he's the one, Bryan Hitch, had to get yelled at by all these people that were upset with Mark Millar over the dialogue. And just look at this. Doesn't that look epic? Now, let me show you something that they did here. Like I said, this was in the original hardcover, and I need to zoom out as much as I can to do this justice. Okay, so here are some fold-out pages. Now, I've seen this in an absolute. And like I said, this was in the original hardcover. But I don't ever see these in omnis. Just look at how epic this looks. That's just one side. I can't imagine reading this on the subway. But that is freaking insane and just epic looking. I wish my camera could zoom in. I wish I had more room in here to do this justice. So that was an 8-page fold out. Even in an absolute, I think the most I've seen is like 6 pages. But this is how they keep it in here. And then the other pages. Now, let's look at the extras while I talk about the binding. And then, actually, let's talk about the layout of the book really quick. Okay, so I'll use this as an example. Much like the Hickman books that he maps himself, the chapter breaks are done by just the title. The covers are left in the back here. And it's pretty interesting because I haven't seen this done before. I've seen the covers and the extras left in the back. So here are all the covers. This is Ultimates Volume 1, 1 through 13. And then we get to Volume 2, Ultimates 2, 1 through 13, and a couple of the variants. But what they do is, after all the covers, this is where they put the annual. And it's an interesting place for the annual, because I remember reading the annual and I thought it took place between the two arcs in Ultimates Volume 2. But I guess you can read it anywhere. But the artwork for the annual is not done by Bryan Hitch, but it's done by the legendary Steve Dillon. So after the annual is the commentary, which I never really see anymore these days. And I love these behind the scenes. It's a commentary for each issue by Mark Millar and Bryan Hitch. And there's the panel I was talking about, and I'll let you figure out what he says within the pages of the comics in case you've never read it. But here's the story of Bryan Hitch just being completely embarrassed when he was in Paris by himself. So I really hope that we see more of that in collected editions. Now let's look at the back here at the character designs by Bryan Hitch. Modernization of these characters. By the way, the book is 880 pages and comes out on February 12th. This is the unused cover. I mean, come on. It's like they were casting Samuel L. Jackson. There's even a joke in here about that before they even cast it. And this is the sketch variant. Sketch variant, these were really cool. This is like the comic book, and all it is just the pencils. And no inks, no colors. So there's no dialogue. It's a pretty cool behind-the-scenes take of a comic book. And they released a lot of those in the early odds. Here is the script, so you can see the script and see how it translates to the artwork. And then you get some unused pencils from the book. And some more pencils. I love this stuff. This is some of my favorites. I've always been a fan of that. I think they were known as the Ultimate Defenders. I've always been a fan of that cover. So these are the covers with the inks and no colors. Pencils. The classic moment there. And Ultimate Iron Man #1 cover. Okay, so these are the Bryan Hitch stuff. Because I forgot was it Orson Scott Clark, I think, and Andy Kubert were the ones that did Ultimate's Iron Man. And then an unused sketch. I've skipped over some pages. Now let's look at the binding. So you could probably tell that it was sewn binding, and there's the perfect eye right there. I don't know what the original binding was like because I don't have it. But the binding in this book is what we've come to love from recent Marvel comics. So, yeah. There maybe like some gutter loss here at the beginning. But nothing too terrible, especially when it comes... I didn't notice when I saw the splash pages, but maybe just a little bit towards the beginning, and then by the time you get to the second chapter, it's fine. Now, when the book comes out on February 12th, you can purchase it from cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for brand new graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. Cheap Graphic Novels prides itself on packaging your books so they arrive safely and in excellent condition, as well as prompt and helpful service. Cheap Graphic Novels Black Friday sale is continuing all through December, so there's still time to save up to 95% off thousands of books. Additional books will be added throughout the month, so be sure to check back often and stay tuned to CGN on social media to be the first to know when the new books have been added to the sale. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discounts, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. So that was all the contents of the book and the binding of the book. Let me know in the comments down below if you already own the original printing of this, if you have the 2 oversized hardcovers, or have them in hardcover, or have the original comics, or you've never read it and this is your first time and you've been waiting for this reprint. Love to know all those comments. Leave them down below and I'll be happy to reply and talk to all you mentees. Again, this was the Uncanny Omar. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe button. We can also be found on Patreon. And thank you to our existing patrons. And our logos can be found on t-shirts and stickers at Redbubble. So, remember, if it's classy and cool, it must be near mint.